Welcome back to The Line. The arrest of two men in a Starbucks in Philadelphia has drawn attention across the country, including here in New Mexico. When we asked on our social media this week what folks wanted to hear us talk about, this story came up several times. The two men, as you probably know, were waiting for a friend at a Starbucks, and the employee behind the counter called the police, who came and arrested them. Starbucks will close all stores for one evening in May to do a special training countrywide. And Vic, we have to really applaud the CEO. He really stepped in and said, look, we have to make some changes here. He's going to meet with the two men, or maybe he has already. But is this bigger than just one chain, one store, because it's a very high-profile store? It happens all the time. And we got a lot of folks writing us here at New Mexico in Focus that it happens here in New Mexico as well. What should we take away from this situation that we've all been exposed to here?
That it is rampant. I mean, this is institutional racism at its most vile. And I told myself this morning, I hope I could make it through this segment without crying or shaking, because how many times have we sat in a Starbucks or any other place? I mean, I was out of town this weekend when this happened. I was not watching the news. Meanwhile, I was in Denver going to Starbucks. And I left my partner. He was sitting there outside at Starbucks with our dog even. No coffee, no nothing, waiting for me for a half an hour. And did anybody say anything to him, the white guy? Nobody said a word. In fact, they came up and said, "Can I get your dog some water?"
Oh, wow.
And this is just, I'm tired of white people saying this doesn't happen. I'm tired of white people, you know, and that's what was great about, the only good thing about that day, were the other white people who stood up and said, what on earth?
In the video,
these guys are just sitting here waiting on a business meeting like we all do. And, you know, I do applaud the Starbucks CEO, but he's not closing all his stores. He's closing less than a fourth of his stores.
I see.
And he's closing them in the afternoon. I would like to see, if he really meant it, let's get rid of that morning rush. Let's do it in the morning, and let's do it across the board.
When people are fresh, they can hear it.
Let's be serious. We have to all, I mean, and he has met with these gentlemen twice, and I appreciate that. But I mean, this is, I think about everybody I know who's raising a young black or brown man right now, and what they have to be terrified about every single day.
That's right. Senator, I appreciate your thoughts on that, Vic. Absolutely. Senator, it turns out in some of the reporting that these gentlemen were in there a grand total of about 2 minutes before the police were called. You know what I mean? It's absolutely amazing. And I can't tell you how many times I've had people walk up to me when I've been waiting for someone in a store, said, "Can I get you something? Are you know, it's all a very sort of like, why are you here alone?" It's a very odd thing. You know what I mean? So what should we take away from this as a country?
Well, you know, this whole incident's a parade of disasters. It really is. I mean, and it's a testimony to how social media is making the world very transparent,
Good point.
You know, and I had to chuckle a little bit because these two men were real estate brokers, and I'm in the real estate business, and I've been to Starbucks meeting clients hundreds of times, and like Vic, I sit down. A lot of times I don't order drinks. I've never been approached ever. So it's a common practice. But you know, we can have rules and laws, but we need to have character and discretion. So Starbucks says you can't use a restroom if you're not a paying customer. So yeah, I get that if that's applied broadly. But these guys are in there and they're saying, "Listen, I'm waiting for a client." Well, the rule says that you have to be a paying customer. Well, I'm waiting for a client. You know, so have a little bit of discretion. Please enjoy yourself. Sit down. So lack of discretion, communication from management, regardless of the rules, But the police officers, same thing. You know, these guys, their rights were not read to them.
Thank you.
And so the police officers come in. Are they communicating with management, and are they communicating with these men? And you know, my son's a police officer. Part of their job, communicate, get to the bottom of things, What you don't want to do is you don't want to arrest these guys. You don't want to arrest these guys. And if these guys were doing their job, interestingly enough, police officer who happens to be African American says they're doing their job. Why in God's name would they arrest a couple of people in Starbucks that are waiting for a client, for heaven's sake. So we need, yes, sometimes rules and regulations and more laws and all this, but we need character and discretion. And in both instances, with management and with the police officers, there was no discretion, no communication.
That's right. In fact, when the person they were waiting on showed up and said, these are my guys I'm waiting to have a meeting with, in my observation of these things, there's a certain point when the police get involved where they can't go, oh, well, our bad. Okay, we'll just take those cuffs off. And it always seems to have to go to the next crazy place. Yep. Being bailed out of jail. They didn't get out of jail until later that night. For what? Sitting in a Starbucks? It's incredible. What can we do here? We have discrimination laws in this country. Are anti-profiling laws a possibility for us here?
Yeah.
And of course, how does one,
Take me way back to con law in 1998.
Right.
The law, you have to serve everybody,
right,
but you can make rules about who can hang out in your place or whatnot.
Right.
So I think it'd be great to have, laws that said, yeah, you can't profile, you can't do this. Because I disagree, Mark, that the police did something wrong or that everything was haywire. It was things went off the rails. Things went exactly the way they were supposed to, right? The Starbucks manager saw that the white space was being threatened by having two unidentified black men there who weren't buying anything. She called the police, not to protect herself, but to protect Starbucks from this incursion. The police came and did what their job is, which is make sure that the white people didn't feel threatened, make sure that this place was, kept safe so the white people could come in for their coffee. I think there is a call for discretion for character, but it's not. We need to follow these procedures and policies and laws or whatever. It's saying, okay, the people who can easily move in that space, who can, without any friction, go into Starbucks and hang out for a while, actively making that space more welcoming, actively saying so, right? And the contrast between the two black gentlemen who were sitting there calmly talking to the police, getting arrested, and all the white people up in arms in their face with no fear of getting arrested, because that was their space where they were supposed to be. And so I think
good point.
It's not just let's not be just racist. It's okay. How can we actively de-racify this place? How can we stop racing people in this way?
Right.
And an afternoon discussion with a bunch of people who are going to be at Starbucks for the next 6 months is not going to do that.
That's right.
But it's incumbent on all the people who take advantage of that space, who are welcome in that space, to make it
Senator Snyder, we just have a minute and a half here on this. Let me kind of open the lens on this a little bit and make it a little more local. I can't tell you how many times I have had Native American friends or strangers tell me that they have been profiled as well in situations like this here in New Mexico. It happens a lot to Native American folks here. And so it asks, again, on that bigger question here as we're talking about this, what do we do as people? Senator Boitano has it right about character and stuff, but these things still happen. There's a human element here that we haven't made the leap yet, if you get my drift here. Yeah.
I don't know what we actually can do. I am pleased with the reaction of the other customers at the Starbucks.
Right.
They said nothing, because they could have been any color and said, there's nothing wrong here, there's nothing going on. And I'm like everyone else. I've used Starbucks as a meeting place for many, both business and with constituents. And I think speaking up when you see wrong is the thing that each of us can do. We may not be able to change the law, we may not be able to change someone's personality or thoughts process or bias, but we can stand up for what is right. And that, to me, is my first responsibility to do.
Appreciate it. You would agree with that, Vicki? That you started this off with you noting those folks speaking up, and that's where change happens, doesn't it?
Well, we have to. Mark's right about the laws. We can have laws all day long, but it's incumbent on every single one of us to make this planet better. And it's up to all of us to confront it. People, if you don't know how to do it, learn how to be a bystander. Learn how to do this. There are resources out there for you.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Good point. We'll have to wrap it there.